An old acquaintance, a hidden affair, my heartbreaking confession. Before everything unfolded, my life was as close to perfect as it could be. I had a loving husband, 3 wonderful children, and a career that was taking off. We were the typical suburban family, something I had always aspired to be a part of. During my second year of marriage, I started working at a local firm. There, I was introduced to a man named Dan. He was tall, charming, with an infectious laughter that could brighten up the gloomiest of days. However, I already knew Dan. Dan and I went to rival high schools. Our paths crossed on numerous occasions during interscholastic sports events. He was a star player on his school's basketball team, and I was a cheerleader at mine. We were familiar faces to each other, existing on the periphery of each other's adolescence, but we never really interacted beyond friendly competition banter. The first time I remember speaking to Dan was at a state championship game. Our schools were both vying for the title, and the energy was electric. In the midst of the chaos, he'd approached me with a friendly wager, betting that his team would win. His confidence was infectious, his smile unforgettable. When his team won, he found me in the crowd, offering a teasing grin and playful "I told you so." I remember being struck by his charm, the ease with which he navigated the world around him. Through the years, our interactions remained limited to these sporting events, brief exchanges filled with playful jabs and shared laughs. We built a rapport based on mutual respect and an unspoken understanding, one that stemmed from being a part of rival schools yet sharing common experiences. In many ways, those adolescent encounters laid the foundation for our later friendship. It was these shared memories, the history of our teenage years, that made our connection at work so instant, so natural. The spark that had been ignited in our school years, unbeknownst to both of us, flickered into a flame in the backdrop of our adult lives. Looking back now, I realize how these seemingly innocent interactions unknowingly paved the way for our future relationship, a relationship that would lead to a profound change in my life. There was an immediate sense of familiarity, a thread of camaraderie born from shared past memories, a mutual history that bound us together. Our conversations flowed naturally. We laughed at the same jokes, reminisced about the past, and connected on a level I hadn't expected. There was an undeniable chemistry, and I began to find myself looking forward to our exchanges at work, thinking about him even when I was home with my husband. I justified it by telling myself that it was nothing more than harmless nostalgia. As time went on, our friendship grew stronger. The lines between professional and personal began to blur. One late night at the office, while working on a project together, our feelings spilled over, and we shared a passionate moment. The guilt hit immediately. It was a violation of my marriage, of my vows. Yet, I couldn't deny the thrill that came with it, the attraction I felt for Dan. That one moment led to many others, and soon we were entangled in a full-blown affair. As much as I tried to separate my feelings, the guilt started eating me alive. I was leading a double life, smiling at my husband, taking care of our kids, living this perfect family life while hiding a devastating secret. Dan had always had dreams bigger than our small town, dreams that were infectious and alluring. He talked about them with a spark in his eyes, a spark I found myself drawn to more often than not. When he finally got an opportunity to move to a bigger city for a promotion, it wasn't a surprise. Yet, the reality of his departure hit harder than I had anticipated. We had spent a late evening together when he broke the news to me. His eyes were serious, yet hopeful. He spoke of new horizons, a better future. Then he dropped the bombshell. He wanted me to leave with him. I could hear the sincerity in his voice, the hope in his words. He wasn't asking me to abandon my family, but rather to start a new chapter with him. The thought was as terrifying as it was tempting. I loved my family, my kids, and despite everything, my husband. But there was an undeniable pull towards Dan, a forbidden desire that echoed in the deepest corners of my heart. In the days that followed, I was consumed by a chaos of thoughts and emotions. I was torn between my loyalty to my family and the intense connection I felt with Dan. The thought of leaving my kids, their innocent faces looking up at me with unconditional love, was unbearable. Yet the thought of a life without Dan, without the deep emotional bond we shared, was equally distressing. I thought about the life we could have together, a life filled with passion and excitement. But each fantasy was quickly overshadowed by the reality of my family, their love, and the life we had built together. My guilt intensified, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. In our final conversation, I told Dan I couldn't leave with him. His disappointment was heavy, but he understood. He held me close, his touch both a balm and a painful reminder of what I was letting go. Dan's departure left a gaping hole in my life. The job I once loved felt empty without him. His absence was a glaring reminder of my betrayal. I could no longer bear to stay there, so I made a decision to leave. I got a new job, hoping it would help me forget about him and focus on my husband and children. As I'm writing this confession, my heart feels heavy with remorse and regret. I feel guilt-ridden, not just for what I've done, but for keeping it a secret from my husband, the person I had vowed to be honest and faithful to. I find myself wrestling with the tormenting question of whether or not to tell him. Do I confess, causing him tremendous pain, or do I keep this secret buried deep within me, continuing to live with this agonizing guilt? I've made a terrible mistake, one that has the potential to shatter my perfect family life. I feel lost, torn between my guilt and the fear of losing everything I have. Now, I'm just a woman Burton with a painful secret, hoping for redemption, yearning for forgiveness, and desperately trying to figure out how to mend the pieces of my broken heart. I rarely give my opinions because your opinion is what matters most, but you can probably guess how I feel about this, especially when there are children involved. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section. When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.